Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As I hope you know by now, I am Gunnar, coach of intensity endurance, and this is one of my good friends and athletes, Travis Arnold. Everybody say hi, Travis. Travis, say hello to the people.
Hello, gang.
And Travis is mainly a triathlete. Maybe I can convince him to do some bike racing this year, but other than that, I'll let him kind of give a brief summary of his sporting background and how he got into triathlon, and we'll get into the fun stuff from there.
Yeah, my sporting background can be summed up at best as general athlete in loose quotes. I had no swimming, running, or biking background prior to getting into triathlon in college. And a good friend of ours, Josh, was telling me about how he got into Ironmans and sounded like a good deal. So I just signed up and we full sent from there.
Was that really a good deal?
My first swim practice, I could not even swim a full 25 meters in freestyle. And then the next weekend, I was in my first sprint try where I came almost dead last out of the water. That was about our starting point. During the bike portion, I did not even know that the bike had a little chain ring and a big chain ring. I was kind of just messing with the gearing and thought that there was this mythical in-between gear. So yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah. What is that? That was 2015, 2016 for you when you started?
2015 was when I first started working out with the team. 2016 was like my first full season of racing.
Gotcha. All right. So, it's been a 10-year road. I think it's also good to add context that from pretty much 2020 to last year, you would basically not training at all.
No, nothing more than lifting weights and maybe an occasional run, but about a 5-year gap from anything triathlon related.
Yeah. And, you didn't race from 2018 to summer 2024. So also notable in here as well, which, when you got to like 2020, I wasn't coaching yet. We were just riding bikes for fun. And then so I really started coaching you last year, 2024, start of that year. And then you've had some missed time due to work or whatever. So hasn't been a straight 2-year block of training, but
yeah,
I think it's an important context.
The plan there, yeah, was getting into 2024. I was going to try to get back into Ironman training, and we did some months on and off, but work kept getting in the way. So I'd say honestly, my first real year of training back has been 2025 with some hit and miss base training leading up to that.
Yeah, you had a few good months in the spring, and then a rocky summer through September, and then kind of it's 10 weeks of on really until like the only A race you've had since 2018 has been Patagonia, which finished up a week ago. And I would say
my 2024 Virginia State Championship, yeah, 25 to 29.
What, 2 or 3 people in that age group?
A win is a win.
A win is a win. Doesn't matter. There were 100 people in the age group. But yeah, Travis and I actually met when I joined the triathlon team in college. So Travis taught me, how to do transitions and how to actually manage race day and most of those nuanced things that, I think if I didn't have somebody point me in direction, tell me what to do, I'd be a little bit lost. So definitely why I like to focus a lot on that kind of stuff with the athletes I coach now. Just having, this man help walk me through triathlon, it gave me a better appreciation for what I need to do. So I guess we'll go into, that's how we know each other. Why did you decide that you wanted to go with my coaching, plain and simple?
Yeah, so a lot of it came back to, after being away from the sport so long, I think that time frame when I was away was also when you were going through a major upswing in the sport, getting your pro card, racing pro, and establishing your own team and your own coaching. And I had a great coach for years before I stopped racing, and then he got out of coaching. And then, honestly, it was you and watching you develop, watching you grow your team, and then your persistence with getting me back into racing. You were the one kind of constantly knocking on the door, asking when I was going to be ready to make a comeback. So a lot of that credit of honestly, even still doing the sport in general is credited to you, because without that, my bike may still be sitting in the basement and I'd be chasing, whatever other fitness trend my brain decided to do that day.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, we definitely never stayed out of touch from the time we met. So I think it was a pretty seamless transition when you actually had the time to dedicate to the sport. It was all right, let's do it. Let's have fun. And I guess it means when we started and to this day, and probably since you started triathlon in general, the goal has always been I want to go to Kona. But we knew that, picking it back up, was very future state. We'll get there. And I've always told you we will get there. And from today, I think it's probably about 2 years or so, maybe 3 before we do get to that point. But I think in the short time span, you signed up for Patagonia Man last year, which for those that don't know, Extreme Triathlon hosts a plethora of 70.3 and especially 140.6 distance triathlons in just wild places. So Travis got the lottery spot for Patagonia Man, which is in Patagonia, Chile, full distance triathlon. And that's what we've kind of spent the bulk of this year focusing on. And I would say it's, not the way I'd like to go about it. Like, oh, hey, let's jump straight into the full distance triathlon. Let's go big volume, right? I've always preached the opposite, but it's definitely taking somebody with almost no base and trying to create the best athlete possible. It's not impossible that way, right? That's the reason why so many athletes do it. I just don't think it's the most efficient, but we'll get into that race here in a sec. I just think that that's been the main goal since getting back was I want to race. I want to race a little bit more consistently, train more consistently, and now we finally had a big race, which is great. I would say you're back.
Yeah. So just adding a little bit onto that, the goal as a triathlete, right? A lot of athletes' ultimate goal is to get to the biggest stage in whatever distance that is, right? Whether that's short course world champs all the way up to Kona for full distance. And I mean, that's no different for me, especially as a competitor at heart. But being out of the sport for so long, it's just a point of where do we start? And Gunnar was a big proponent of just do a race, get back on the race course and you'll find that spark again. So signing up for Patagonia Man wasn't actually even on my brain this year. Gunnar sent in a group chat of a friend of ours that someone else should sign up for. And I was like, you know what? That's a race that I had been watching since 2018 when they first started it. Had no intentions of ever getting in, and seeing that email come through that I was accepted, I was like, you know what? This is the sign that we need to get back into it. And again, it's not Gunnar's preferred method, but I think he was just stoked because I think he and I both knew that was what was going to get me back on track. So we can get into more of the training, but that was a big move of the needle in getting me back into the sport.
Yeah, it was good to kind of see that fire lit under your ass again. Like, I think it's been years since it was really nothing that really spark that fire, because even once you decide, once you had the time from work to actually dedicate yourself back to something, I was never you have to do triathlon. I just do something that inspires you to actually get out there and work. And because when we started, you were better than me outside of swimming, right? But when I started triathlon, you were better than me, and that's why you were, especially over the COVID time, but my number one training buddy. So it's good to have you back. But yeah, definitely with this, we'll get into some of those challenges that coming back into. I'm going to do one of the craziest 140.6s you could do. It's swimming in 45, 50 degree Fahrenheit water, bike course that had your GPX file on Training Peaks at 9,000 feet of climbing. The run was, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 feet of climbing. That is ridiculous. And I know a lot of the run was trail as well. It's just a brutal race, and to be the first big race back. So I think at the start of the year, we were still battling some of those work obligations, and without going into too much detail for context, Travis's work hours are ridiculous. And a lot of the time he was just not even in country. So very busy man and very hard to navigate training around, which, I'm a big proponent of. I can navigate training around almost anyone's schedule, but that is damn near impossible to navigate around. So once the summer came, or actually around September, almost all of that freed up, and then you moved, which is great. So that was another couple of weeks, but it was really, almost a test of what his durability was getting into that, and how much volume can we throw at you without breaking you, right? We want to kind of push the barrier, but we don't want to knock it down. So I think we were able to stack some intensity and really get some speed back, but it was like, oh shit, we have 10 weeks until you're doing this big race. And we've done enough training throughout the course of the year, but nothing that I'd be like, yeah, that's a great base to work off of.
Yeah, I mean, just tagging in here is like when we were first getting back into training, I was doing some track sessions where I remember texting you that I was stoked that I was able to hold, 400 repeats at a 7-minute pace. I was really coming back from a tough point. I was starting this block back in February when I first got accepted into the race at something crazy like 225 pounds, which is the heaviest that I've ever been. So just even getting back into a running shape, into a biking shape, and again, I'll let you ask the questions about different challenges and stuff. But I mean, it's honestly kind of I never believed the result that I saw. Like if you asked me back in February how I would finish that race, I would classify myself as saying I'd be happy to finish it. So getting to where we were was definitely a testament to both your coaching and us sticking with the plan throughout all of the different obstacles that I threw at you, basically.
Yeah. And also a bit of insight for people listening, like with my training philosophy, like that weight number was never an objective. That was more of a how out of shape Travis was to start. So I wasn't like, oh, you can't be 220 and be fast. You can be 220 and be fast. Majority of almost my entire pro triathlon career, I was over 200. Like, so that's not what he was getting at. It was more of I am this out of shape. So
yeah, no, for anyone listening, that was my sort of like natural carrying weight when I'm actually doing training is around like 190, 195, and that's without doing any crazy dieting or intentional weight loss. So I was probably a good 20 to 25 pounds overweight just from my own standards, not from a dropping weight to be fast perspective.
Yeah. So, but that was, back in February, and it was a very slow grind getting any semblance of fitness back. Really, like we were starting way beyond zero. And I think, it's a testament to Travis's kind of, persistence there. It's very easy to be like, not even close to where I used to be. I don't know how I can do this. It's not worth it, right? So I think just him finally having that spark of inspiration to get out there and do it is all it took, and to know that it's going to suck for a while before it's fun. And, between that period of training in the fall, that was going really, spring into about June, that was going really well. And then again, June to September was super hit or miss with work. And then September to early December for the actual race, where we were just hammering volume and, throwing in intensity where it fit, but, understanding that wasn't the main objective. Like, what was kind of the mindset that you went through all of that with, from zero to something, and then something dwindling away, and then all of a sudden you're just smacked with, I'll let people know Travis had all of a sudden a 180 in availability, and we were able to stack some 20 to 25 hour weeks building up, which really helped. So the mindset of that as well. I'll just speak to that, kind of those few periods of just this year.
Yeah, so I'll kind of get into it from the beginning, both fitness wise and like some of the challenges that came with building that fitness. because for any of you listening that might not realize this, taking a 5-year period away from training, there's a lot of things that you forget about, or lack of maintenance on your bike that can throw some major challenges into the training. So at the very beginning, it was a lot of excitement. Again, that spark had kind of been lit, but I was at zero fitness. So a lot of it was just a lot of texting back and forth with Gunnar. It was like, hey, that workout was terrible, but I know, 9-10 months from now, we'll be to where we want to be. And it was a lot of that reinforcement just from both Gunnar as my friend and Gunnar as my coach, of like knowing that, he's not just blowing smoke. Like I know he would be able to get me there with his skill set, both as an athlete and as a coach. So there were some definite growing pains as I was working through that. Like you said, there's a lot of fast fitness gains coming from 0 to maybe even like 50%. But then you sort of hit that wall of like, all right, training's not getting any easier. Work is still in the way. My progress is slowing down, which is natural when you're coming back from 0, right? Process of getting a new bike, process of doing all this different bike maintenance, and when workouts don't go your way, there are a lot of days that I was texting Gunnar just completely crashing out of nothing's going my way.
That was fun.
I went through a streak where there might have been like 1 or 2 weeks where I had maybe like 3 or 4 good workouts, and the rest of it was, back to the mindset of, maybe I'm not ready to get back into racing this year. And then, that was basically the summertime. And a lot of people see the summertime as, the big racing month, summer leading into fall. So you're seeing a lot of your friends and other athletes that you followed, crushing their goals. And I'm still in this phase of kind of rebuilding and, trying to maintain the mindset that I'm not supposed to be where I'm at fitness wise just yet, right? Like my race is in December. I'm in this weird sort of alternative schedule where it's almost a 180 of a traditional training year. My fitness is nowhere close to where I want it to be, but I'm still trying to go out and ride with friends and do track workouts with friends, and going out on the track with some of our close friends and doing planned workouts. And I'm coming in 30 seconds behind on 400 to 800 efforts. It's pretty demoralizing when you're used to being one of the fastest guys around when you're in peak shape. And then we get to even into the spring, into the fall, and there's some tough challenges because I'm transitioning into a different job. I'm buying a house out of state, and we get into that period where life just hits again, and training becomes back on the back burner. And it's get a workout in where you can, don't let it completely fall off the rails, but progress is definitely still not linear. And then late September into early October, I still like very vividly remember, I was like, all right, I've got, 8 weeks until race day, and my schedule is clear. I've never had so much free time just looking at it from a standpoint. And I texted you and I was like, hey, I'm ready to go. And your response was, do you want your normal training schedule or do you want a full send? And my personality, if you don't know me, is, when I commit to something, it's 1,000%, like I'm not getting on the start line unless I know that I'm going to be coming to beat whatever my personal best is. I don't like to race just to race. It's always a competition with myself, with other people, even if it's friendly. It's like you're going out there to compete. So I told Gunnar, until I say stop, you put on the schedule which you think I can handle. And so we went basically from about like a 50% training load to the first week was 18 hours, and I think we built all up to almost 30 hours, just consecutive back-to-back weeks and just slamming it. And I mean, it was exhausting, but I've also never seen my fitness get so high so fast. So it was really fun in the process of just watching those numbers climb.
Yeah. And that's like the fitness was built off of not quite the speed we wanted, right? So, there could be so much more, but I always say as well, like as much as I am a speed first, volume second, if you have the ability to train that much, and you can't quite do it wrong. Like, if all you're doing is tempo and threshold and you never touch the high stuff, then you are doing it wrong. But I think we addressed that. We were still training every zone all the time, hitting what we needed to do, and on top of just massive volume. So those gains, fitness wise especially, came quick and strong. So I think we'll kind of back it up to January 2025 when we really said, okay, let's get back into triathlon for real, and look at some of the stuff that we are really doing. Like, this is wonderful. This is where we were, and it's a great show of as much red as there was green. Like, and we were starting from zero, like strides on the run, taper workouts. Like, this was from zero up to 3 hours. You did an hour, like, and you got to start somewhere. So, to the people out there, it's like, you don't have to be great to become great. Like, that I think is what we want to do. Kind of the mindset we had to come into this with is, just because we're not where we want to be doesn't mean we won't get there. And it was just a very slow build of, like, I don't know how the hell you got 13 hours this week. Oh, this was double recorded.
Yeah.
That was okay. Bike workouts got double recorded. Fine. But 6 hours, 5.5 hours, up to 9 hours, a little bit more consistency, 5 hours.
Then February hits and I travel for work and hurt my back simultaneously, which again put us out basically a month because I could barely walk with a back injury. So that was another low point of, I'm just getting back into the flow of training, and boom.
Pretty April. So the first full green week is going to be the first week of April, and that's a 12-hour week, and that's really kind of it. And again, we're back taper workouts, so light zone 3, zone 4. This was double recorded, so it's 10 hours, man. Another double recorded bike there. Swim openers, standard aerobic stuff, just getting back into it here. And that's kind of what we built off of. April through May. You raced in June, raced Jamestown Sprint, the Virginia State Championships. And I did the Olympic that day. We were both standing at the start line, and they cut the Olympic swim in half and then canceled your swim. And you told me it was the first time in your life that you were upset because you actually thought that you had an advantage in the swim for the first time ever. And I think that was pretty cool. So you want to kind of talk about that swim progression, because back just 10 years ago you couldn't swim a 25, and now you're like upset that you couldn't swim in a race. So
yeah, I mean, so going into it, I again have never had formal swim training, and for our college team at VMI, we had one swim practice per week, and kind of major credit to the coaches there and the club there for doing what they could with the time that they had. But there's real no way you can possibly improve with one swim practice a week. So for the entire beginning of my time as a triathlete, I was building that off of one swim practice a week throughout the school year, and then racing with my local tri team in the summers up to 3. But I'd still never had any dedicated, just interaction on, let's focus on getting your swim better. So I was in great shape, but I was constantly fighting myself in the water, so even on my good days, I was maybe swimming a 2-minute 100 pace and just constantly dreading getting in the water because I get prescribed a 30-minute swim. And my first thought is, should I use fins to get through this? Like, I don't know if I'll be able to swim 30 minutes.
It hurts me so much, man. And I'm glad we've gotten away from that.
I think that's an experience that a lot of triathletes without a swimming background can probably relate to,
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I think that's not to cut you off, but I think that's something that a lot of triathlon coaches don't know how to do, is really build from the foundation of swimming. And a lot of swim coaches honestly don't know how to do that either. Because when you're taught to swim, you're this kid and you're hypersensitive to the sensory of things. And, swim coaches don't teach you really how to feel the water. They tell you to feel the water, but it's the kids that are super, like, I was never the best, still to this day, not the best athlete. Like, I'm good, but that sensitivity to, you know, where my body sits in the water, like that, you can't teach. And you can teach, but people don't know how to. And I think starting with that was something, you know, for your swim progress was just huge.
Yeah, so as we, kind of get back into it, I almost look at this as my 5, 6 years off of racing as a positive in my development as a triathlete and swimmer, because my brain had basically dumped every old bad habit that I had learned or picked up through sort of like kind of self figuring it out in the water as I went along. And I get back into the water with the workouts that Gunnar's prescribing, and he's got his workouts and says do this drill, and I'll straight up say it. I was texting Gunnar, just annoying the hell out of him, like, hey, I need more specific guidance. Like, what does this mean? Like, this is a foreign term to me. He was always there responding, like happy to respond, because I think you can see the fire in him as a coach of like, oh, this is an athlete that's excited about getting better. So, he kind of fed off of that as well, of kind of answering every single question I had and kind of helping me along and just kind of building slowly towards that. I remember just like one day I was swimming some 100 repeats, and it just sort of clicked. I was like, oh, that's what my arm is supposed to feel like in the water. And that was maybe 2 or 3 days after I had driven down to Richmond to do a short workout with Gunnar. And we spent maybe 10 minutes of him just watching me and saying like, hey, try this, you'll feel better. Try this, you'll feel better. And it didn't click that day, but a couple days later, just kind of like, all right, Gunnar told me to do this. And then just the way that your body kind of reacts when it suddenly clicks, I was stoked. I was texting him, I think for like 3 weeks after that. I was PRing basically every distance set that I was swimming in the water. I texted him like new PR, and just so stoked that I was finally starting to figure it out and watching. It turned to the point that I used to dread getting in the water for 30 minutes. I used to dread the swim start and telling myself that, all right, after I get out of the water, then it's the real race to that day in Jamestown. When I was like, man, I was excited to finally be ahead out of the water, or at the very least, mid pack. Because being realistic, I'm still not at the top of the swim, but even coming out of the water mid pack, I knew it would be a major advantage for me as an athlete, because I'm on a more level playing field, and just that excitement now almost has me like excited to go to the pool. Like I'm excited to get in the water and keep growing.
Yeah, I think we knocked at least 20 seconds off your 100 PR this year. I don't know exactly what it was before, but I think we're down somewhere around like 110 or so now. And I know you weren't under 130 before, so I think it was good to just forget everything you had tried to learn before and really embrace the new process. And now, yeah, it's starting to click, which is fantastic. And I think only up from there, which is great. And that'll get us into kind of the end of the summer, a little rocky, hit and miss with some training, but this is where it was right here of let's just send it, right? So that first week, 19 hours almost. And we're still looking at like this workout here. These are 3 minute, 2 minute, 1 minute. That 1 minute max effort. And then straight off of that into a nice little tempo workout, threshold, some kind of threshold run. So it's still pretty low intensity, but like this swim, so breath work underwater, hard aerobic swim, recovery swim, long swim. So there's nothing hugely intense here, but as we kind of start to level off in the volume ramp, that intensity comes back into it because we now have mitigated the injury risk of things. So a totally different perspective of what comes first here, because we're looking at we got 10 weeks until you're racing 140.6, and you've been pretty rocky the last couple months. So even the next week we're looking Tabatas like hard, but nothing else that's crazy. Hills, which, I've talked about many times before of this hill workout, 8 to 10, 40, 50 seconds, full 3 to 4 minutes rest. Like that is, still enabling that neuromuscular recruitment. But this is a fun swim set. I mean, we had all the time in the world to go swim, but, even on this day, a 2,300 yard set, like 1050s, max effort on 3 minutes. That is a good day. That's a good day. So I think, kind of talk through this, we're looking at long rides and then, kind of off the bike for the people that are a little bit more injury prone than you. Like you're pretty stout in that department. We put those kind of long runs the day before the long ride. But here we were just able to kind of put that at the end of the training week. And because of that, that run didn't need to be as long. And we were able to throw in some, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 type cycles within that long run. And again, I think that 2 hour run is really all we really got to. So this week we changed it up because we had to, but yeah, and then there's race day. So that's looking like the longest run we did was right around 2 hours because we just put enough sprinkle of, high aerobic in there. And here's towards the end of the block, we're looking at 25-hour weeks, 100 pace work. So that's not 100s. That's like 100 pace, right? And then 100, 200, 300s, five times through. So we're still here. These 12 minutes are tough efforts. That's almost all of the VO2 type work. So we put a lot of intensity inside of that big volume and just made it as much as we could handle. So kind of how are you feeling this, 8-9 week true build to that race?
Yeah, so at the very beginning of it, a lot of it was nerves of am I really ready for this? Because again, I'm the type of competitor that doesn't want to get on the start line just to finish a race. I know that was our goal, that this wasn't a true A race, but we talked a lot about throughout the year of like, all right, we're going to crush this race. And then there were some periods where it was like, all right, hey, let's just finish the race. We don't think that will be a challenge per se, like you'll be able to finish, but how happy will you be with the finish? And for me, it's about, can I walk away at the finish line saying that I truly put in a great effort that day. So starting that training block, it was putting a lot of faith in you as a coach and you reassuring me is like, hey, we're not quite where we want to be, but the fitness will stack, like put your head down, get the work in, and we will get there. So going through the beginning of that, it was like, all right, like game on. Up until this point, I would say I had never really, and this isn't a knock on you, is more so like my career had been the priority. Like I had never fully invested in your coaching up until that point. It was a lot of me following your training plan and me doing what I could where I could, but to be fully invested is, like, all right, Gunnar as a coach is putting in a lot of time and effort into making these plans for you or for me as an athlete with my specific goals in mind and knowing the circumstances, right? Of like, all right, he's got 8 weeks. This is what we're going to do to get there to achieve the best result as possible. And to really, when I mean fully invest is say, okay, these workouts are my priority. I'm not going to stay up going out with friends the night before because I know that if I mess up this bike workout, it kind of throws off the entire week, right? Or like if I miss this run training, then there's no real replacing that in the training plan. So now he's got to alter everything that he had built out in order to accommodate something that simply like I'm not prioritizing, right? So the beginning of that training block, I would say for me was the first time I had fully taken the step and saying, this is my priority. I'm fully invested into getting the results that I've been talking about all year. And again, there's challenges in that of, like that was the first time I had ever done that amount of volume. So sort of listening to my body and figuring out like, all right, is this a soreness that will lead to injury, or is this a soreness that my brain is just telling me you're tired and you don't actually want to do the training? So from that range into the range of like, oh, I've got a major workout after this workout, so I need to be properly fueling, right? And I still even think that was a major challenge, because properly fueling when you've got, 6 hours of training in one day can be tough, because it's not just eating what you're used to eating, right? Because like I could eat a bowl of oatmeal and be fine for this bike workout, but how's that bowl of oatmeal going to sit in my stomach when I have to go run after this? And that was, something I was figuring out along the way. And what I ended up resorting to is basically just eating large packs of English muffins and honey, because it gave me enough carbs and calories to sustain my body throughout the day without upsetting my stomach. And then, eating a lot of calories after training was done for the day to compensate and make sure that I was still getting enough fuel in to prevent injuries, right? Because that amount of training, injuries can pop up really quick without proper fueling. And again, it was a long 8 weeks, but just keeping your head down of like, all right, this workout is going to lead to this, watching the numbers sort of skyrocket. Again, watching that fitness go up, and the feeling that you get when you get on the bike and you're like, all right, this is going to be awesome. But there are some challenges in there as well. I moved to a completely new area that I've never moved in. And now I'm faced with the challenge of, I don't have my sort of like comfort routes that I call them. Like, all right, I know I can go out on this 40-mile bike loop, and this is a great area to do this workout in. I know I can go to this trail and do this run workout and not have any issues. So now I'm faced with going out on AI generated routes, or routes that I planned that I didn't know were going to be, like a 4-lane highway. And you're like, oh, this is not an ideal spot to do it. You're climbing up an 18% grade hill when you're supposed to be doing an easy ride, so there's a lot of challenges thrown in there as well. And a lot of that can stack up mentally as an athlete, when all you're trying to do is get a good workout in. And, those challenges that you have to overcome, and just trust the process. Is like, all right, this workout didn't go how I wanted to, but I still got the workout in, and that's still going to be fitness banked for me as an athlete, that as long as I keep going, it will get to where we want to be. And I think we got there in the end, especially for our first major race back.
Yeah, and I think like that mentality is half the battle sometimes, where it's not everyone's has the goal is that big to say no to things, right? To then try to increase in which the priority that training is, right? So some people be like, training will always be my fourth priority, or whatever. But having the ability to change that around, really, not only does it allow you to actually hit the training now, but when you are more invested in it, you take it more seriously. Even if the workouts don't go better, the results come. Because now it's not just the training, but like you said, it's the fueling, the sleeping, the everything that goes around it, where, you have an hour run, great. But that hour run, when you are truly dedicated to that, comes into, all of the extra planning when you're going to do it, planning if you're going to do it with people, planning what you're going to eat before, after, during, the sleep factor. So all of that, the recovery, stretching, rolling, etc., all of that, taking it more seriously in turn leads to better decisions about how your lifestyle affects your training. And, it's not mandatory for people to do, but it definitely helps yield better results. And I think, as far as kind of this whole year, really, since we've been working together, there's not really been any sessions, right? I think kind of in that block, it's, the long rides and trying to get as much over VO2 max as we could without increasing fatigue a lot. Nothing really that was special. There's no magic ingredients, but I was just curious if there was any training day or training session that really hit hard, or that kind of just stuck with you a bit.
For me, I would say the one that maybe two that really stuck with me the most of this training block is my first real like long swim where I felt good. And by long swim, I don't mean, I'm just swimming 15 to 30 minutes straight. It was a 63 or 6,400 yard set of of different, thresholds. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember getting into the pool just, wildly nervous. Like I've never swam this far before, I would be completely toast coming out of it. And I remember getting out of the pool and just feeling great. And I feel like that was kind of a step turned. And it wasn't just feeling great. It was, looking at the stats afterwards, and I was like, man, my times are actually pretty good too. It's not just completing the workout, but it's completing the workout with intent and with good results. And I remember like, all right, I can not just finish the swim now, but I can do well in the swim. And that was a big workout for me. And then another one would probably be going out on it was like a 5 hour long ride. And again, not necessarily a key session, but I had something like every 10 to 20 minutes do a 30-second all out sprint, right? And some of those came up some massive hills. And without even really thinking about it or specifically trying, I was hitting some all-time power numbers going up these massive climbs. And I remember a couple things about that day was I remember distinctly not seeing any other cyclists out on the road. And I was questioning, is this a matter of the new area being in, not necessarily being, super heavily populated with cyclists? Is it because it's only 26 degrees outside and nobody wants to be outside right now?
Yeah.
And I'm questioning those. And then I come back and I'm saying like, I'm hitting all-time numbers in just some super like adverse conditions, and just being like, man, we are not even a full year into true training together, and I'm hitting numbers that I've never hit before in weather conditions that I absolutely should not be hitting these numbers in. And just like, yeah, we're on to something here.
Yeah, I think I do remember that day because I saw that workout. When I got the training peaks notification, I was like, "What?" I was shocked because I remember you texting in the morning. You're like, "It's so cold. I don't know if I should do this outside or not." And I'm kind of like, "That's your call, man. That is, I'll tell you what to do, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it." That makes sense. So yeah, that was great. And I think it kind of launches us into, going down the future. It's still build from here, right? And I remember that last swim workout I gave you before Patagon, man, because we don't know, but we know that this amount of time dedicated to training isn't going to be, consistent throughout the future. But we don't know what exactly that's going to look like with the job situations. But I was like, I think it was like 6,800 or something that last swim workout. I was like, this is the longest workout you'll probably ever do. Enjoyed it. Yeah, that was a fun time. But I think even if we back down to like a normal human's amount of 14 hours a week or whatever that number might fall into, that Kona goal, and I know my goal for you is 2027 to qualify. And I would probably be qualifying for the 2028 Kona race, right? But I think that's still on my end the goal. And I know on your end, you're like, that's what you've always been shooting for. Anything you want to talk to that, how you feel about that, if you're scared about that, how your confidence level going into it, that kind of just what your future looks like from your point of view.
Prior to racing Patagon, man, and I know that's a separate topic that we're going to hit, that goal was still a major question for me of like, do I have what it takes, especially as we get into the most competitive years age group wise, like we're getting into the toughest years of competition and thinking about like, do I truly have what it takes? But after that big training block, again, knowing that that's not necessarily something that's sustainable for most people, even myself, as I get back into more normal schedule, seeing the results that I could put up, something like a top 10 to top 15 bike split on the day, including the pro
Yeah.
fields, and overall having a great run prior to, like some nutrition mishaps, a top 25 finish at a pretty, one of the most challenging 140.6 courses you can do. I'm excited of where we're at, because any course I do from there is going to be easier in terms of like logistics speaking, right? Like there's not a course in the world that's going to have 9,000 feet of elevation gain.
Right. And also just the stress of travel. Like that's so undervalued, the stress of travel. And the one thing that I like to emphasize is traveling east. I tell all my athletes, if you go travel west, right? Like we're East Coast based, the two of us, like if you travel west, the worst thing you can do is acclimate to the time zone, right? Because the race starts at 6, 7 a.m. And like if you're used to waking up early, it just makes it so much easier. Because if you're an East Coast person racing in California, now all of a sudden that race is starting at 9 or 10 a.m., right? And you've had the time to wake up normally, eat a normal breakfast, but you had to travel 2 hours east. And that made that wake up at what, 1 a.m. your normal. Like that's ridiculous.
It was a midnight wake up local time, which would have been a 10 p.m. wake up on the East Coast. For
waking up. That's bedtime, man.
For a pretty big day of racing. But going back to your original question, my performance in that race, and we can get into that race separately, but my performance there has me really excited about the goals to come, because, just looking at the raw data, the power numbers, where I'm at physically, I think we're in such a great spot that race basically checked all of our boxes of like, hey, let's get back into the sport. Let's build your base fitness back to a point of like, this is a good block to start from. And I think that's exactly where we're at of, my top end speed's not there yet. There's still so many numbers we have to hit, but we're at such a great point of both like confidence, health wise, that I'm super stoked for the goals to come.
Yeah. And I think, where we're at, it leads us to be able to have a great off season of really forcing the speed mentality of like, let's actually get super, super fast. And now that we're at this level, like adding the fitness on top of that's going to be really easy. So I think, and like the Patagonia race was incredible from my point of view. It's just really fun to watch. And I know like we've had some nutrition mishaps there on the run that, a lot of things out of your control. And to finish 25th overall, I mean, your bike was, way up there in speed. So, you can't look into it too much because you don't know with all of the extra logistics where all of these people are coming from. There was a group of pros, a couple big names like Josh Hamburger and Alistair Brownlee, right? And neither of those two won. So that's saying something. So, with all of that, you had a wetsuit too small for you. And there were, things that happened, right? So we can't dig too deep into that, but we can take value in that was a really awesome performance. So I think moving forward, it's, goals are going to be fun to watch. And the mentality of let's just see what we can do is the best thing you can ask for as a coach. So we will get into Patagonia specifically in a separate video. We'll have Nick back for that one, as Nick was your on course support along with your wife Gabby there, and I think that'll be a fun video for the three of us to really deep dive into the race more, since it's just something so already a niche sport of triathlon. It's just an even more niche and nuanced experience. So I'm excited about that chat, but I'll leave any final words to you, and we'll have a good rest for the day.
Yeah, I mean, kind of closing thoughts here is a big shout out to you and a thanks to you of, keeping on me about getting back into the sport. I think us being like training buddies over the years played like huge dividends, and like you knew the passion that I had for the sport and the joy that it can bring when you're doing it with a good group of people. And I'd kind of gotten away from that, constantly being on the road and away from family and friends. Like I had more or less isolated myself to the point that like I had no like training buddies anymore. So
no fault of your own, but it's just how life happens sometimes.
So it's it's hard to get back into the sport where I can't just like text, my friend Gunnar, my buddy Gunnar, and be like, hey, let's go for a ride. Not because he wouldn't be willing to do it, but because like I am at the point that I'm so slow now that we're no longer like true training partners, So for Gunnar to stick with it and just constantly just ask and not pressuring of like, hey, come on a ride, just sign up for a race. We'll do it. We'll do it as friends. You'll get the spark back. Everything will be good. All the way leading up into like Gunnar as my coach and me truly committing to the training plan. I mean, we hit on it here, but there's different levels of goals that you have, right? And for me as a competitor, like truly investing in the training is the biggest thing you can do, especially with a coach like Gunnar who's putting so much time and effort into putting these sessions personalized to you into the training, that like the best thing you can do for yourself out of respect for yourself as an athlete and out of respect for your coach, whoever that may be, is fully committing to the plan that they've got for you. Because if you can't do that, then you can't truly judge the results that you're getting. And I think we've seen that here, even with just a short amount of time that I've been able to commit. And that's what's got me so excited for the future is, like the plan works, right? So if Gunnar tells me I've got 2 years to get to my goals, I know that that's a true, like, hey, if I keep my head down and I invest in this plan for 2 years, then I'll probably be exceeding my goals of where we're set, not just reaching them. And I don't think enough can be said for that.
Yeah, because I think we said at the start of that last block, we wanted to do Patagonia in under 13 hours, and you were 13:10. So take a couple race day mishaps, and that's easy. So we're there. We're both trusting each other, and I think that's part of a good athlete coach relationship, because I also have to trust the athletes I'm coaching, right? So it's been a good ride so far, but we got a lot more to do. So everyone have a nice Christmas is coming up, New Year's, happy holidays, and more coming soon.
Buy your friends coaching, intensity endurance.
Thanks for the plug. I'll see you, Trav.
Later.